When my son-in-law grabbed the microphone at my daughter's wedding in front of 300 guests and called me a desperate old idiot looking for love, everyone laughed, including my own daughter. The very next day, I canceled the $450,000 apartment that was supposed to be my wedding gift to them. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell icon because we have new stories every single day. Leave a like and let us know in the comments which city you are watching from. My name is Michael Miller. I'm 66 years old, and for 40 of those years, I built a small chain of family hotels in Miami, which gave me stability, respect, and the ability to keep every promise I made to my wife Sarah before cancer took her in 2016. 8 years have passed since she died, and I still remember every word of our last conversation in that hospital room on March 23rd at 4 in the morning. "Michael, promise me something," she said with a weak voice while holding my hand with a strength that did not match her consumed body. "When Emily gets married, give her the wedding she always dreamed of. Do not spare any expense. Make it perfect. I will not be able to be there, but you will. Do it for both of us." I promised her it would be that way. Sarah died 6 hours later at 10:15 in the morning, with our 24-year-old daughter Emily crying on one side of the bed and our 21-year-old son David on the other. I held her hand until it was no longer warm. 8 years later, when Emily announced her engagement to Daniel Moore in January of this year, I knew the moment had come to fulfill that promise. I did not hesitate for a second. I told my daughter she would have the wedding of her dreams, that she should not worry about anything, that I would take care of every detail. I saw her eyes shine the same way Sarah's used to shine when she was young. I invested $200,000 in that wedding, the most elegant ballroom in Miami, imported flowers, a gourmet menu for 300 guests, a live orchestra, a designer dress. Everything was perfect. Everything was just as Sarah would have wanted. But while I was organizing every detail during those 5 months, something inside me began to stir up memories I had buried 4 decades ago. One night in April, while reviewing wedding invoices in my study, I found a wooden box in the closet that I had not opened since 1997. Inside were my old carpentry notebooks, furniture designs I had created when I was 25, photographs of handcrafted pieces I built with these very hands before family pressure convinced me that a carpenter has no future and pushed me into the business world. There was one photo in particular that stopped me. Me at 28, smiling next to Linda Evans at an art expo in Seattle back in 1986. Linda was an art student, and I was a dreamer carpenter. We became friends during that summer. She used to tell me, "Michael, you have a gift. Do not waste it out of fear." But I was afraid of disappointing my father, afraid of not being able to support a family, afraid of being seen as a failure. So I abandoned carpentry, opened my first hotel with a family loan in 1988, met Sarah that same year, and built what was supposed to be a successful life. Was it successful? Financially, yes. Emotionally, I always felt I had betrayed an essential part of myself. Sarah knew it. In our last months together, she told me, "When I am gone, I want you to find what makes you truly happy, Michael, not just what makes you responsible." I put those notebooks away again and tried to concentrate on the wedding. But after Sarah's death, I had done something very few people knew about. In 2017, a year after losing her, I sat down with my best friend Anthony Rossi, a retired lawyer of 68, and completely reorganized my assets. Anthony suggested creating asset protection clauses, ironclad wills, and legal security systems. "Michael," he told me, "you have built a lot, protected intelligently. I even installed a discreet home security system in my house with cameras and audio recording in common areas." Something Anthony recommended, after an acquaintance of his, was a victim of family fraud. At that moment, it seemed excessive to me, but I did it anyway, and I never imagined those precautions would be relevant one day. The last 3 months before the wedding, I noticed subtle changes in Daniel. He had always been polite to me, correct but distant. A 35-year-old architect, well-dressed, with a stable career. Emily met him at a marketing conference in 2021, and they started dating shortly after. For 3 years, I saw him at family gatherings, Thanksgiving dinners, birthdays, always cordial, always with the exact smile. But in March of this year, 2024, something changed. His answers became shorter, his visits more spaced out. When I spoke, I noticed his attention was elsewhere. Pre-wedding jitters, Emily told me when I mentioned my perception. Daniel is stressed with work, Dad. Do not give it any importance. David, my younger son, a university professor of 29, was more direct. Dad, I do not like that guy. There is something fake about him. But I wanted to believe in my daughter. I wanted to fulfill the promise to Sarah. I wanted to see Emily happy. The wedding was scheduled for June 15th, 2024. There were weeks left, and everything was ready. June 15th dawned with a clear sky over Miami. I woke up at 6 in the morning in my house after barely 3 hours of sleep. It was not nervousness keeping me awake, but a strange sensation I could not identify, as if something important was about to break. I showered, shaved carefully, and put on the dark gray suit I had custom made especially for this occasion. While adjusting my navy blue tie in front of the mirror, I thought of Sarah. Today I keep my promise, my love, I whispered to the reflection. I felt a knot in my throat, but I swallowed it. This day was for Emily, to see her happy. The civil ceremony took place at 11 in the morning at City Hall. Emily was radiant in her designer silk dress, her hair up in an elegant bun showing the pearl earrings that had belonged to her mother. When I walked her toward the officiant, she squeezed my arm tightly and smiled at me. Thanks for all this, Dad. Mom would be proud. Those words filled me with deep satisfaction. All the effort, every dollar invested was worth it for that moment. Daniel was waiting in front of the officiant with a perfect smile. Impeccable black suit, silver tie, confident posture. They exchanged vows, signed documents, kissed under the applause of the 60 close family members present. David was by my side, tense. Are you okay? I asked him in a low voice. Yes, Dad. I just want this to be over, he replied with a look I did not know how to interpret then. The real celebration began at 7 in the evening at the Royal Event Hall, a majestic space with high ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and capacity for 400 people. Exactly 300 guests had arrived. Friends of Emily and Daniel, work colleagues, distant relatives, acquaintances from the Miami business world. The tables were decorated with white roses imported from Ecuador. The centerpieces had floating candles. The dinnerware was fine porcelain. Dinner went without setbacks. Smoked salmon appetizer, main course of filet mignon with red wine reduction, a 5-tier wedding cake covered in fondant and edible flowers for dessert. Everything was going according to plan. I was sitting at the main table next to Emily, Daniel, David, and Daniel's parents, Robert and Dolores Moore, polite but cold people who had barely directed a word at me all evening. Anthony was at a nearby table with his wife Rose. He had winked at me when I arrived at the hall, his silent way of saying, "You did it, friend." The orchestra played soft background music while the guests talked, laughed, toasted. I had hired a professional photographer, videographer, special lighting, every detail taken care of down to the millimeter. After dessert, the time for toasts arrived. The master of ceremonies, a professional entertainer who had cost $2,500, took the microphone and announced, "Now we will hear words from family and close friends of the bride and groom." First spoke Daniel's best man, an architect partner of his named Richard White. He told funny anecdotes about shared projects, conventional wishes for happiness, polite applause. Then spoke Emily's maid of honor, her cousin Martha, who recalled a shared childhood, teenage complicities, good wishes for the marriage. More applause. I did not plan to speak. Emily had told me she preferred to keep the speeches brief, and that my presence was enough demonstration of love. But then Daniel stood up unexpectedly. He took the microphone from the master of ceremonies and walked to the center of the room with a confident step. "I want to say a few words," he announced with a clear voice that resonated through the speakers. The room went silent. Emily looked at him with a curious expression. "I thought it would be a formal thank you." "First of all," Daniel began with a wide smile, "I want to thank someone very special who made this incredible celebration possible." He made a dramatic pause. I felt all eyes turning toward me. Michael Miller, my father-in-law, invested a fortune in this wedding. He paid for absolutely everything. The hall, the food, the flowers, the orchestra, even the personalized napkins, light laughter from the audience. I nodded modestly, feeling uncomfortable with the public attention, but assuming it was part of the protocol. Then Daniel changed his tone. His smile became wider, almost mocking. "And do you know why he did it? Because this old man paid for everything because he is an idiot, desperate for love, who has nothing else in his life." The words came out of his mouth with chilling naturalness, as if he were commenting on the weather. There were 2 seconds of absolute silence in the room. Then the laughter exploded, first timid, then louder. 300 people laughing. I looked at Emily expecting indignation, defense, something. She was laughing too. Not an uncomfortable laugh of nervousness. A genuine laugh with her hand over her mouth, her eyes bright. She exchanged a complicit look with Daniel. It was in that precise instant that I understood. This was planned. They had talked about this before, maybe that same morning, maybe weeks ago. The room kept laughing. Daniel continued smiling, enjoying the reaction. The master of ceremonies laughed nervously, not knowing how to regain control. Daniel's parents had satisfied expressions. Robert even raised his glass toward his son in a sign of approval. I remained motionless in my chair. There were no tears. There were no screams. Only a cold clarity settling in my mind, like ice crystallizing. Every investment, every promise to Sarah, every effort of 5 months reduced to entertainment for 300 strangers. I stood up slowly, without rushing. David tried to touch my arm. "Dad, don't go like this," he whispered urgently. "I need air," I replied, with a calm voice I did not recognize as mine. I walked toward the exit of the hall, while the laughter gradually diminished. No one stopped me. No one apologized. I went out to the parking lot where my car waited under the orange light of the street lamps. It was 10:15 at night on June 15th, 2024. I sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. I took 3 deep breaths. I took out my phone and wrote a message to Anthony. "I need to see you tomorrow. First thing. Bring the apartment documents." I drove home in absolute silence. I arrived home past midnight. The residence where I had lived 32 years with Sarah felt strangely empty that early morning of June 16th. I did not turn on the main lights, only the lamp in the study. I poured myself a scotch I rarely touched. An 18-year-old Macallan I kept for special occasions. What irony. I drank 2 long sips, feeling the liquid burn my throat. My phone started ringing at 12:20. "Emily." I rejected the call. It rang again 3 minutes later. "Daniel." I ignored it. At 12:40. "Emily again." I turned off the device and left it on the desk. I sat in front of the computer where I kept financial files, contracts, legal documentation. I opened the folder titled Emily Apartment Gift. Inside were all the papers. Preliminary deeds for the condo on Ocean Drive, 1,200 square feet with ocean views, valued at $450,000. I had signed the purchase commitment in March. The final transfer was scheduled for June 18th, 3 days after the wedding. Everything ready to give them the keys during the honeymoon as an additional surprise. $450,000. The savings of 15 years of careful work, prudent investments, personal sacrifices. I was going to gift them to a daughter who had just laughed publicly at my humiliation. While looking at those documents, something clicked in my brain, a recent memory I had not fully processed. 3 weeks ago, at the end of May, Emily and Daniel had come to dinner. I prepared roast lamb, her favorite dish since she was a child. During the after-dinner conversation, Daniel received a call and went out to the garden to take it. He was outside for 20 minutes. When he returned, he had a tense expression. Emily asked him if everything was okay. He replied, "Yes, just work stuff." You know how the old man Fernandez is, always demanding last-minute changes. Both laughed. But now, reviewing that scene, I remembered something I had forgotten. When Daniel said, "The old man Fernandez," he looked directly at me for a second, and Emily averted her gaze toward her plate. It was a minimal gesture that at the time I interpreted as a coincidence. Now I understood it had been discomfort. They were talking about me in code. I got up and walked to the control panel of the residential security system installed in 2017. Anthony had insisted on placing discrete cameras and audio recording in common areas. Living room, kitchen, garden. Michael, it is not paranoia. It is smart protection after what happened to Stephen with his nephew. He had told me, referring to an acquaintance who suffered internal theft. I agreed more to please my friend than out of my own conviction. I turned on the system and accessed the history file. It had 6 months of storage. I began to review recent dates, looking for visits from Emily and Daniel. The first relevant recording was from May 22nd, exactly 3.5 weeks before the wedding. They had arrived on a Saturday afternoon while I was in the garden pruning rose bushes. The kitchen camera captured them perfectly. Daniel opened the refrigerator, took out water, poured 2 glasses. Emily was leaning on the counter. "Do you think he suspects anything?" she asked in a low voice. My heart accelerated listening to that. "Your father? Please, Emily. That man is so obsessed with fulfilling promises to your dead mother that he sees nothing else." "It is too easy," Daniel replied, laughing. "Don't be cruel." "He loves us," said Emily with a tone that did not sound like a reproach, but a weak justification. "He loves us so much he already invested $200,000 in our wedding and hasn't even asked what we will do with the apartment. Pure, cheap sentimentality of a lonely old man." I paused the recording. I took a deep breath. I played it again to make sure I had heard correctly. The words were exactly the same. Lonely old man. Cheap sentimentality. From the mouth of my future son-in-law, with my daughter present, in my own kitchen, under my roof. I continued reviewing files. I found another conversation from June 8th, a week before the wedding. Both were eating pizza they had ordered while I attended a meeting with the event planner. Daniel was talking on the phone with someone named Richard, probably his best man. "No, seriously, dude, the old man is going to pay even for the bathroom flowers. I have been pretending for 2.5 years that I care about listening to his boring stories about hotels and dead people. It will all be worth it when we have the apartment in our name." 2.5 years. Not 3 years since they started the relationship. 2.5 years since they specifically initiated the manipulation plan. That meant that for 6 months, Daniel had been genuine, or at least neutral. Then something changed. I calculated dates. 2.5 years ago, it was December 2021, just when I casually mentioned during Christmas dinner that I was considering selling the hotels and distributing inheritance early to my children. I kept searching. There were dozens of fragments over months. Emily justifying herself. "He is my father, Daniel." "Yes, he is intense and talks a lot about the past, but he is giving us a life we could not afford alone." Daniel responding. "Exactly. That is why we endure a little more. After the marriage with the apartment secured, we can establish distance. Mandatory visits on Christmas, birthdays, nothing more." By 4:30 in the morning, I had reviewed 27 different files. I had clear evidence of systematic manipulation, constant mockery, calculated strategy. My phone was still off, but I imagined the calls piling up. At some point in that early morning, I stopped feeling pain. A cold clarity installed itself in its place. It was not fury. It was absolute determination. At 5:45, the doorbell rang. Anthony Rossi appeared at the door with a thermos of fresh coffee and a worn leather briefcase. He had deep dark circles under his eyes. "You didn't sleep, right?" he asked me, entering directly into the study. "Neither did you," I replied. "You sent me a message at 10:15. I knew something serious had happened. I brought all the apartment documents, and also the asset protection papers we drafted in 2017. Anthony opened his meticulously organized briefcase. I showed him the recordings. He listened in absolute silence, taking occasional notes. When we finished, it was 6:30 in the morning. The sun was beginning to illuminate Miami. Anthony closed his notebook and looked at me with a serious expression. "Michael, this is more than enough for legal action, but before any legal movement, you need to decide what exactly you want to achieve." "I want to recover my dignity," I replied without hesitating, "and I want them to learn that the consequences of their actions are permanent." Anthony spread out 3 different folders, labeled with meticulous precision on my desk. Folder 1, Preliminary Contract for the Ocean Drive Apartment. Folder 2, Asset Protection Documents established in March 2017. Folder 3, Legal Options Available Based on Gathered Evidence. He opened the first one while I poured coffee into 2 ceramic mugs that Sarah had bought at a flea market. "The final transfer is scheduled for the day after tomorrow, June 18th, at 10 in the morning at the bank offices," Anthony explained, pointing to specific clauses. "You have a cancellation window up to 24 hours before without major penalties. You would lose the initial deposit of $20,000, but you would recover the remaining $430,000. He ran his finger over the legal text. "However, there is a better alternative. Invoke the bad faith breach clause. If you prove the transaction was based on deceit or deliberate manipulation, you recover the deposit too." I looked at the digital clock on the desk. 7:15 in the morning on June 16th. Emily and Daniel were probably still sleeping after the party, oblivious to what was about to be unleashed. "How much time do you need to prepare the cancellation documentation with full recovery?" I asked, taking my first sip of coffee. Anthony took his laptop out of the briefcase. "Give me 2 hours. I will draft a formal notification backed by recordings. The bank will open an investigation petition, but with this evidence, and it is standard procedure, you will recover everything." While Anthony worked on legal drafting, I opened the second folder, Asset Protections. After Sarah's passing, devastated by the void, but strangely lucid, I had taken strategic financial decisions following my lawyer friend's advice. We had created a complex structure where my main assets were protected through trusts, revocable clauses, and beneficiaries with conditions. Emily was listed as a beneficiary of $280,000 in joint investment funds. Those funds were under my administrative control with a specific clause. They could only be transferred if I determined that a healthy family relationship based on mutual respect existed. The wording had seemed excessive in 2017. Anthony insisted. "Michael, I have seen families destroy themselves over money. Protect your effort with clear conditions." Now that foresight turned out to be prophetic. I had also designated Emily as a secondary beneficiary of my will after David. 30% of total assets for her, 70% for my younger son. But that designation also contained revocation clauses based on circumstances of irreparable breakdown of family bond due to actions of the beneficiary. I took my phone, still off, and turned it on. The screen exploded with notifications. 47 missed calls. 23 from Emily, 18 from Daniel, 4 from David, 2 from unknown numbers. Accumulated text messages filled the app. The first one from Emily sent at 12:35. "Dad, where are you? I need to talk to you. Urgent." Second message from Daniel at 1:05. "Michael, it was just a tasteless joke. Don't take it like that." third from Emily at 2:20. Dad, please answer. Daniel's worried. It was the alcohol. I blocked both numbers without replying. David had sent a different message at 7 in the morning. Dad, I know you are okay because Anthony wrote to me. Take your time. I am here when you need me. My son understood. I replied briefly. Thanks, David. Everything is under control. Talk soon. Anthony looked up from his computer. I need to install an additional camera in your main living room. If Emily and Daniel come today confronting you, we must document everything they say. The previous recordings prove past manipulation, but direct threats would give us additional material for stronger legal actions. I nodded. My friend took a tiny security camera out of his briefcase, no bigger than a matchbox. New technology, 4K resolution, directional audio, cloud transmission. I will put it inside the frame of that picture of Sarah. While Anthony installed the device carefully, I opened my personal laptop and started a search I had postponed for 40 years. Seattle, the city in the Pacific Northwest where I had spent that transformative summer in 1986. I typed in the search bar. Seattle downtown apartment rental. Dozens of options appeared. Buildings with views of Pike Place Market, condos in Pioneer Square, modern studios in Capitol Hill. I did not know exactly why I was searching. Maybe I needed to visualize an escape. Maybe a seed planted by Linda decades ago was finally germinating. I saved 3 links and bookmarks. Then I searched. Linda Evans Artist, Seattle. The first result showed a professional website. Linda Evans, School of Plastic Arts and Gallery. A recent photograph showed a 62-year-old woman with short gray hair, a genuine smile, surrounded by young students in a bright workshop. I read her biography. I founded this school in 1995 after 15 years as an independent artist. I believe in the transformative power of art at any stage of life. It is never too late to create. Those last words resonated peculiarly. I closed the laptop without sending a message. Not yet. First, I needed to resolve the immediate. Anthony finished installing the camera at 8:40. Ready. Now, anything that happens in this room will be recorded with perfect quality. He returned to his computer and typed quickly for 30 more minutes. At 9:15 exactly, he looked up with a satisfied expression. Finished. Formal cancellation letter addressed to the bank, invoking the bad faith breach clause, backed by extracts of recordings attached as evidence. Proceed with sending. Proceed, I replied without hesitation. Anthony pressed the send key. Done. The bank will receive notification in the next 15 minutes. They will initiate internal investigation protocol. Emily and Daniel will be contacted for statements. Full recovery of funds processed in maximum 72 hours. $450,000 saved with a click. The rest of the morning passed in a strange calm. Anthony left at 10 with a promise to monitor the bank's response. I showered, changed clothes, and ate toast with olive oil that had no taste. Everything seemed to happen behind thick glass that muffled sensations. At 11:30, I received confirmation from the bank. Investigation initiated, funds frozen until resolution, appointment scheduled with both parties for June 20th. David appeared around noon with a grocery bag containing fresh fruit, cheese, and freshly baked bread. I thought you wouldn't have eaten anything decent, he said, entering directly into the kitchen. My son inherited Sarah's dark eyes and also her ability to read silences. He prepared sandwiches while I remained seated at the table without saying a word. Last night, Daniel crossed the line, he commented finally, cutting tomatoes with surgical precision. Emily, too. I tried to follow you, but you had already left. She called me crying at 3 in the morning, saying you had turned off the phone and that Daniel was furious. David placed the sandwich in front of me and sat on the other side. What are you going to do, Dad? I already did the first thing. I canceled the apartment this morning, I replied, taking a small bite of the bread. David showed no surprise. It was the right thing. That guy never respected you. I knew it for a long time, but Emily didn't want to listen to me. She is blind with him. We spent the next hour talking about practical details, how to handle the inevitable family scandal, what to tell curious relatives, how to protect my peace of mind. My son left at 2 in the afternoon after assuring me he would come daily if I needed him. Silence returned to the house. I took the opportunity to review again the recordings Anthony had selected as most damning. We chose a specific fragment from June 8th, where Daniel spoke on the phone with Richard admitting, "I've been pretending for 2.5 years that I care about listening to his boring stories about hotels and dead people. It will all be worth it when we have the apartment in our name." I copied that file onto a USB drive that I kept in my pants pocket. Intuition told me I would need it soon. At 6:32 exactly, the doorbell rang with aggressive insistence. I looked at the security monitor. Emily and Daniel at the front door. She was wearing a casual blue dress, hair loose, tense face. He wore a wrinkled white shirt, jeans, furious expression. I opened after the 5th ring. "Where the hell were you?" Daniel exploded, pushing the door before I could invite them in. Emily entered behind with red eyes. "Dad, you have had us calling all day. What is happening?" Her voice trembled between worry and annoyance. I guided them toward the living room where Anthony's hidden camera would register every word. "The bank contacted us 2 hours ago," continued Daniel, walking agitatedly. "They say you canceled the apartment purchase. They say you presented evidence of I don't know what crap. What does that mean?" He planted himself in front of me with crossed arms, jaw clenched. Emily remained by the sofa, wringing her hands. "Dad, it must be a misunderstanding. You promised that apartment. We are counting on it." I sat calmly in my favorite armchair, the same one where Sarah used to read novels on Sundays. There is no misunderstanding whatsoever. I canceled the transaction because I discovered that for 2.5 years, you two have been deliberately manipulating me. I pronounced the words with crystal clarity, without raising my voice. The silence that followed was dense. Daniel recovered his posture quickly. "Manipulating? Michael, it was a bad joke at the wedding. I was drunk. I am sorry if I offended you, but canceling the apartment is a disproportionate reaction." He smiled, trying to downplay it. That same rehearsed gesture he had perfected for 30 months. Emily nodded quickly. "Exactly, Dad. Daniel didn't mean what he said. We all laughed out of nerves, not because we really believed that." I took the USB drive out of my pocket and connected it to the large TV in the living room. "Allow me to show you something before you continue lying." The screen lit up, showing the date, June 8th, 2024. Audio began to play with perfect quality, Daniel's voice unmistakable. I have been pretending for 2.5 years that I care about listening to his boring stories about hotels and dead people, and it will all be worth it when we have the apartment in our name. The color left Daniel's face. Emily opened her mouth without making a sound. I stopped the playback. I have 26 similar recordings, conversations in this house during the last 6 months, where you both discuss openly how to exploit me emotionally and financially. I maintained a neutral tone, almost clinical. Residential security system installed in 2017 for asset protection purposes. All legal, all judicially admissible. Daniel took a step back. His mask finally fell completely. "You were spying on us, you paranoid old piece of crap. You record private conversations in your own house." Fury replaced any attempt at pretense. Emily took him by the arm. "Daniel, calm down." But he pulled away brusquely. "I'm not going to calm down. This old man owes us that apartment. We invested 3 years in this fake relationship. 3 years enduring his pathetic anecdotes about his dead wife. 2.5 years, I corrected firmly. And Emily knew. Maybe not all the details, but she knew enough." I looked directly at my daughter. She lowered her eyes to the floor. That gesture gave me total confirmation. Emily finally raised her gaze from the ground. Her eyes shone with held-back tears, but her voice emerged firm. "Dad, yes, I knew Daniel sometimes complained about your stories. We all complain about our parents occasionally. That doesn't mean we plan to rob you. She walked toward me with hands extended in an appeasing gesture. The apartment was a gift from you. We just accepted it gratefully. If you decide to withdraw it now because of some stupidity my drunk husband said, it is your unfair decision. Unfair? I repeated the word, savoring it. Emily, does it seem unfair to you that I protect assets I built during 40 years of honest work? Assets I planned to share generously with a daughter I thought respected me. I got up from the armchair slowly. The apartment was just apart. I also froze access to the $280,000 in joint investment funds, where you were listed as a conditional beneficiary. The impact of that information was immediate. Daniel paled even more. 280,000 additional? You had that saved for her and never mentioned it? His voice distilled disbelief mixed with barely contained rage. Emily staggered slightly. Dad, those funds were for my future. Mom and you created them when I was born. You cannot take them from me for this. I can, and I already did, I replied with absolute firmness. Review the legal documentation you signed in 2017 when we updated papers after your mother's death. A specific clause establishes that the transfer proceeds only if a healthy family relationship based on mutual respect exists. Advice from Anthony, my lawyer. At that moment, you protested it was excessive. Now you understand why it was necessary. Daniel exploded completely. You are a manipulator. All this theater of a loving father was disguised control. Clauses, recordings, conditions. Who does that to their own family? He took several threatening steps toward where I was, but stopped when I pointed discreetly toward Sarah's picture, where Anthony had installed the hidden camera. You are being recorded right now, Daniel. Every threat, every insult, all documented with perfect quality for legal proceedings. Emily began to speak openly. Dad, please, I am your daughter. I made mistakes, yes. I let Daniel speak badly of you, yes. But that doesn't erase 32 years of being your little girl. She tried to hug me, but I stepped back. The gesture paralyzed her. Never before had I rejected physical contact with her. I do not recognize the child I raised and the woman who yesterday laughed at my public humiliation, I said with a voice broken for the first time in the whole conversation. Daniel grabbed Emily by the arm brusquely. Let's go. This old man is crazy. We will get a lawyer and fight this legally. He cannot take the inheritance that corresponds to you by right. They began to walk toward the exit. Emily turned one more time. This does not end here, Dad. You are unfair and cruel. Daniel is right. We will seek legal advice. I saw them leave without adding another word. I heard their car engine start and drive away. Dense silence filled the house again. I looked at the wall clock. 7:15 in the evening on June 16th. In 24 hours, my life had turned 180 degrees. I walked to the kitchen and made chamomile tea that Sarah used to make when I needed to calm my nerves. The aroma transported me 8 years back to shared afternoons where she read while I reviewed business accounts. When I am gone, I want you to find what makes you truly happy, Michael, she had said in one of those ordinary afternoons that turned out to be extraordinary for being the last ones. With a steaming mug in my hands, I went up to the attic I hadn't opened for months. A dusty space full of labeled boxes, Christmas decorations, old clothes, out-of-print books. I searched until I found a carved wooden trunk my father gave me when I turned 25. Inside remained intact sketchbooks, carpenter pencils, yellowed photographs. I opened one of the notebooks at random. Design of a dining table with hand-turned legs, notes on types of varnish, precise measurement calculations. My writing as a 28-year-old filled pages with enthusiasm I had forgotten I possessed. I turned pages slowly. Chairs, shelves, dressers, every piece imagined with loving detail. At the bottom of the trunk, I found the photograph I was unconsciously looking for, Linda and me, at that exhibition in Seattle, summer of 1986. She was holding a ceramic sculpture. I was showing a stool I had carved in oak. We both smiled with that naive confidence of someone who still believes passion is enough to live. I went down with the photograph and laptop to my study. I searched again, Linda Evans. Her website was still open in a tab saved from the morning. I read the full biography this time, reviewed the gallery of her students' work, found a contact form, hesitated 5 long minutes with fingers suspended over the keyboard. Finally, I wrote, "Linda, I am Michael Miller. I don't know if you remember me. We met in Seattle almost 40 years ago. You were the one who encouraged me to stick with carpentry before I took another path. I just went through a difficult situation that made me rethink many things. I saw your school, and I wonder if it is ever really too late to go back to what we loved." I pressed send before regretting it. Linda replied to my message 3 hours later. "Michael Miller, of course I remember you. You were the most talented carpenter I met, and the only one who abandoned his gift for fear of failure. I am glad to hear from you after so long. It is never too late to return to the authentic. If you are considering major changes, my door is open. Seattle remains beautiful and needs true artisans." I read her words 5 consecutive times that night of June 16th. Something inside me began to move, like a rusty gear finally turning after decades without movement. The following weeks passed in a strange rhythm. Emily hired a lawyer named Beatrice Solis, who sent a formal letter on June 20th, demanding reversal of the apartment cancellation and access to investment funds. Anthony replied on the 23rd with exhaustive documentation, transcribed recordings, legal clauses, evidence of systematic manipulation. The bank closed the investigation on the 28th, confirming full recovery of $450,000 in my favor. Emily lost both legal fronts in less than 2 weeks, but I had stopped paying attention to the legal conflict. During July, something deeper was brewing. David came daily, bringing food, silent company, unwavering support. One afternoon in mid-July, while sharing a paella I had prepared, I confessed to him, "I'm thinking of selling the hotels." My son left his fork suspended in the air. "Are you serious?" I nodded. "I've been managing a business for 40 years that never really thrilled me. I built it out of obligation, out of fear, out of other people's expectations. I don't have to prove anything to anyone anymore." David smiled slowly. "Mom would be proud. She always said you were too good to be trapped in offices counting sheets." That unexpected validation filled me with renewed courage. I hired a professional appraiser during the first week of August. The 4 small family hotels distributed around Miami were evaluated at $2,400,000, a fair figure considering locations, facilities, accumulated reputation. I contacted an investor from New York named Serge Camp, who had been interested in expanding to Miami for years. Negotiations took 3 weeks. On August 19th, we signed a preliminary contract. Anthony reviewed every clause with a meticulous magnifying glass. "Michael, you are closing a 40-year chapter. Are you completely sure?" We were in his office on August 21st, documents scattered on a walnut desk. "Surer than ever in my life," I replied without hesitation. Sarah asked me to find genuine happiness. I finally understand what she meant. While sale procedures advanced, I exchanged frequent messages with Linda. She sent photographs of Seattle, Pike Place at dawn, alleys of Pioneer Square, her workshop full of students working wood and clay. "There's a space available near my school," she wrote on August 20th. "Perfect space for carpentry. 1,200 square feet, extraordinary natural light, reasonable rent. If you are really considering a serious move, I can reserve it." I didn't think too much. "Reserve it," I replied that same afternoon. On September 5th, 4 months after the wedding disaster, I gathered David at home for an important conversation. "I sold the hotels. Transaction completes in 10 days. I want to explain how I will distribute the money." I opened a folder with a detailed financial plan I had designed with Anthony. $600,000 for you without conditions. You deserve them for being the loyal son you always were. 400,000 to foundations your mother supported, cancer research, animal shelter, public library, 600,000 invested in purchasing property and equipment for the carpentry workshop in Seattle. 800,000 remaining to live comfortably the rest of my years. David remained quiet, processing information. Finally, he spoke with an emotional voice. Dad, you don't need to give me anything. You already gave me education, values, an example of integrity. I interrupted him gently. I want to do it. You are a university professor with a modest salary. These 600,000 will give you freedom to buy a decent home, start a family when you find the right person, live without financial pressure. It is my way of thanking your unconditional support. My son finally accepted with tears he did not try to hide. When do you move? October, first week. I already booked the moving truck. The news exploded in the extended family like a grenade. Cousins, uncles, acquaintances called bewildered. Michael moves to Seattle at 66. Sold successful hotels for what? To make furniture. The scandal was delicious. For decades I fulfilled others' expectations. Now I lived exclusively for myself. Emily sent a message on September 10th. Dad, I heard you sold everything. Is it true you're leaving? We need to talk urgent. I did not respond. 2 days later, she appeared at my door. I attended her briefly on the entrance step without inviting her in. She looked gaunt, deep dark circles. Daniel left me, she confessed with a broken voice. He says I ruined his life by losing the apartment. Dad, I made terrible mistakes. Please give me another opportunity. I felt compassion, but also absolute clarity. Emily, I wish you sincere well-being, but I will not return to the role of provider-father who financed your life while you disrespected me. I am building a new existence based on authenticity. You can be a peripheral part if you demonstrate genuine change with time, but you will never recover access to the Michael you knew. I closed the doors gently. On October 3rd, 2024, 45 years after arriving in Miami as a scared young businessman, I loaded a truck with essential belongings, old carpentry tools, photographs of Sarah, clothes, books. David accompanied me during the long drive to Seattle. When we spotted the Space Needle under the golden afternoon sun, I felt an unknown weight leave my chest. Linda was waiting for us in front of the place that would be my workshop. The space occupied a corner in the Capitol Hill neighborhood, an area where artists, musicians, and designers shared restored old buildings. 1,200 square feet with north-facing windows, offering constant light without direct glare, exposed brick walls, high wooden ceiling beams, polished concrete floor, perfect to transform into a functional workshop. Linda hugged me on the threshold with warmth that dissolved 4 decades of distance. Welcome home, Michael. This time no one will convince you to abandon what you love. David unloaded boxes while Linda showed me the space. Ideal corner for table saw, wide zone for workbench, existing shelves usable for storing lumber. Her enthusiasm was contagious. I spent the first week of October installing basic equipment I had bought, with part of the 600,000 destined for the project. Professional circular saw, orbital and belt sanders, drill press, complete set of Japanese chisels, carpenter clamps, laser level. Every tool placed in its spot represented a renewed commitment to a forgotten craft. On October 14th, I officially opened. I placed a simple sign on the door, Miller Workshop, handcrafted furniture. No advertising, no grand opening, just silent availability. I expected customers to arrive naturally attracted by the quality of the work. The reality was less romantic. First week, 0 visits. Second week, a neighbor asked prices for a custom shelf, heard the figure, and never returned. Third week, an older lady commissioned repair of an antique chair. Paid $40. That was my only income in October. November began with growing uncertainty. I had invested more than $200,000 in purchasing the property, $60,000 in equipment, $30,000 in minor renovations. My monthly expenses between rent for the apartment where I lived, food, utilities, totaled approximately $2,000. I could sustain myself for years with the reserved $800,000, but the failure of the venture hurt more than financial loss. I was failing at what was supposedly my true passion. Linda perceived my discouragement. On November 9th, she appeared with a proposal. Michael, people don't know your work. You need community visibility. Why don't you offer free workshops on Saturdays? Teach basic techniques to interested young people. Generate connection with the neighborhood. Show your skill. Build reputation organically. I hesitated initially. I'm 66 years old. What can I teach technological youth accustomed to instant solutions? Linda laughed. Precisely for that reason, they need to learn the patience of craftsmanship. Trust me. On November the 16th, I placed an ad on the neighborhood community board. Free basic carpentry workshop. Saturdays 10 a.m. Learn to create with your hands. First Saturday, November the 23rd, a single participant appeared, a 19-year-old kid named Ethan, industrial design student with genuine curiosity. I taught him fundamentals, wood selection, safe tool handling, assembly techniques without nails. His fascination was palpable. Ethan returned the next Saturday bringing a friend, Nicole, 21 years old, architect in training. Third session, December 7th. 5 people arrived. Fourth session, December 14th. 9 participants filled the workshop. I charged absolutely nothing. I only shared knowledge accumulated during interrupted youth. Something unexpected happened during those sessions. I myself was rediscovering forgotten pleasure. The sensation of wood under fingers, aroma of fresh sawdust, satisfaction of observing a piece take shape gradually. Every pencil stroke on board, every precise cut with handsaw, every surface smoothed with sandpaper, reconnected me with the version of Michael I had buried 4 decades ago. In January 2025, 5 young people became regular apprentices. Ethan, Nicole, plus George, 22 years old, self-taught carpenter, Amy, 20 years old, fine art student, and Liam, 24 years old, graphic designer looking for manual trade. They came during the week too, helped with my personal projects, learned advanced techniques. It was Amy who suggested the idea that would change the direction of the workshop. You know, Michael, have you considered working exclusively with reclaimed wood? There is a growing movement of sustainable consumption. People look for unique furniture with history, not industrial production. The proposal resonated deeply. Seattle and its surroundings were full of demolitions, restorations generating waste of noble wood, century-old oak beams, old pine planks, chestnut doors. I contacted demolition companies in the region. I got access to rescued materials, old windows convertible into mirror frames, industrial pallets transformable into tables, abandoned train sleepers perfect for rustic benches. Each piece had marks of time, cracks, knots, and irregularities that made it unrepeatable. I created the first collection in February, 8 pieces named Memory Series, dining table built with beams from a 19th century farmhouse, chairs made with planks from a retired fishing boat, shelving made with rescued shutters. I photographed each piece professionally with Liam's help. Nicole designed a simple website, https www.google.com. Search millerworkshop.com. The impact was gradual but constant. In March, I sold 3 pieces to an interior designer from Vancouver for a total of $8,000. In April, a couple of architects from Portland commissioned complete equipment for their home, $20,000. Word of mouth began to work. Clients valued authenticity, sustainability, narrative behind each creation. On April 22nd, a journalist from the Seattle Times named Ian visited the workshop. He was preparing reports on new old trades, people abandoning conventional careers for traditional craftsmanship. He interviewed me for 2 hours, photographed space, talked with apprentices. Article published on May 3rd occupied a full page. From Hotel Yeo to carpenter at 66, Michael Miller demonstrates. It is never too late to return to essentials. Text narrated my story without unnecessary dramatism, highlighted quality of work, mentioned sustainable philosophy. Central photographs showed me sanding surface of century-old table, concentrated face, hands stained with varnish. Repercussion was immediate. 32 emails in 48 hours, 12 formal commissions in the following week. Invitation to exhibit at the Sustainable Design Fair in Portland, scheduled for June. One afternoon in May, while varnishing a dresser with Ethan, I understood something fundamental. I had not abandoned a successful life in Miami. I had escaped a comfortable prison to finally live. While my life flourished in Seattle during the spring of 2025, in Miami, Emily's reality was crumbling systematically. David kept me informed via weekly calls that I listened to with a mix of residual sadness and protective detachment. The scandal of the video where Daniel humiliated me publicly had circulated beyond family circles. Someone shared it on professional social networks, eventually reaching executives of the marketing agency where Emily had worked for 6 years. In March, barely 2 months after my move, she was fired under the excuse of departmental restructuring. David told me they actually wanted to avoid association with a negative image. Emily is destroyed, my son told me during a phone conversation on March 15th. Lost job, Daniel became unbearable, blaming her constantly for having ruined his plans for the apartment. They live in a small, rented apartment, argue daily. I felt automatic compassion any father experiences, but also firm clarity. The consequences were a direct result of conscious decisions she took. Meanwhile, relationship with Linda evolved naturally from recovered friendship toward deeper companionship. We shared frequent dinners in downtown restaurants, long walks by the waterfront at sunset, long conversations about art, philosophy, second chances. She never married, dedicated complete existence to her school and artistic creation. I had loves, she confessed one night in April while we drank wine on a terrace facing the ocean, but none worth sacrificing my creative freedom. I learned that chosen solitude is preferable to company that empties you. Her words resonated with my own experience. For 40 years I lived accompanied, first by family expectations, then by Sarah, whom I genuinely loved, but within a structure I never questioned. Finally, by paternal obligations I assumed without healthy limits. Now, at 66, I discovered that being alone consciously allowed choosing company from fullness, not from need. At the end of May, I received certified mail from Miami. Emily's handwritten letter filled 3 pages of floral letterhead paper. I opened the envelope with trembling hands, sitting on a bench in Volunteer Park, where I used to read in the mornings. "Dad," it began, "I write this letter because calls and messages have not worked. I need you to know I am pregnant. I found out 2 weeks ago. I am 12 weeks along. The baby will arrive in December." Daniel reacted terribly. He says he cannot support a family without the economic future we lost because of me. Our marriage is broken. I sleep on the sofa for a month now. I continued reading with a knot growing in my throat. I made unforgivable mistakes. I allowed Daniel to speak badly of you. I laughed when I should have defended you. I prioritized money over dignity. I understand it now. But this baby is innocent. Your grandson or granddaughter deserves a chance. I do not ask you to forgive me yet, nor to return to be the father I was unable to value. I only ask for basic help to survive this pregnancy. I have no private health insurance after losing my job. Public health care is collapsed with eternal waiting lists. I need adequate prenatal care. The letter ended without dramatic demands, only a humble request. If you can help me only with medical expenses until the baby is born, I will be eternally grateful. I expect nothing more. I understand limits you established. Emily. I kept the letter in the envelope and walked a long time processing contradictory emotions. Part of me wanted to ignore the request completely, maintain absolute distance as an educational consequence. Another part recognized that the unborn child was an innocent victim of adult disaster. That night, I spoke with Linda in her apartment. I showed her the letter. She read carefully and returned pages with a thoughtful expression. What do you genuinely feel, Michael? Not what you should feel. What you really feel. I took time to respond honestly. I feel Emily needs to learn complete responsibility for her acts. But I also feel a child should not pay for a mother's mistakes. And I feel I can help without sacrificing limits I established. Linda nodded. Then you already know what to do. Help the baby, not Emily. Establish clear parameter, limited, without ambiguity, that can be interpreted as restoration of previous relationship. I drafted a response the next day. Brief, direct letter. Emily, I will pay for a complete private maternal health plan during your pregnancy. Coverage includes prenatal consultations, analysis, ultrasounds, and delivery in a private hospital. Approximate cost, $4,000. It is my investment in the well-being of my future grandchild, not re-establishment of our previous father-daughter relationship. When the baby is born, I will evaluate limited participation as grandfather, always mediated by David initially. I hope you use these months to reflect deeply on values you want to transmit to your child. Michael. I sent the certified letter on June 2nd. Emily replied by brief text message. Thanks, Dad. I promise to do things better. In August, David informed me that Daniel had definitively abandoned Emily. He went to Chicago with a job offer. He left her a message saying she ruined his life, and the baby was not his problem. Emily is living with cousin Martha now. I felt renewed contempt toward that man, but also recognition. Emily repeatedly chose people who treated her with similar disdain to what she showed toward me. My life continued its upward course. The Sustainable Design Fair in Portland was held between June 13th and 15th, 2025. Exhibitors from all over the U.S. presented innovative proposals combining contemporary aesthetics with environmental responsibility. My booth occupied 200 square feet in the central pavilion, 6 pieces of the Memory series, arranged strategically under professional lighting, Liam had designed specifically to highlight textures of rescued woods. Ethan, Nicole, George, and Amy accompanied me during the 3 days. We had formed a cohesive team where each member contributed complementary skills. Ethan handled technical aspects with clients interested in construction processes. Nicole explained architectural philosophy behind designs. George demonstrated traditional joinery. Amy narrated origin stories of each piece. The first day we sold a side table made with abandoned train sleepers for $3,000 to a gallery owner from San Francisco. Second day, modular shelving built with old windows acquired by a Seattle architecture studio for $5,000. Third day, complete dining set commissioned by a restaurant in Portland, specialized in organic cuisine. Budget $18,000. Total fare $40,000 in direct sales, plus 18 solid contacts for future projects. But economic recognition was secondary to deep satisfaction I experienced. Observing visitors touch century-old wood, admire natural irregularities, value authenticity over industrial perfection. A French architect around 50 spent 40 minutes examining a chair made with fishing boat planks. Finally commented, "This piece has a soul. It shows whoever created it understands that wood keeps memory of previous lives." Her words validated the entire journey traveled since that humiliation in Miami. During the fair, a journalist from a specialized design magazine requested an interview. We met in the convention center cafeteria. A young woman named Christina recorded a 50-minute conversation where I spoke about transition from hospitality to carpentry, philosophy of sustainability, importance of second chances after 60. Article published in August edition included cover photograph. Me working in workshop surrounded by my apprentices, highlighted title, Never Too Late, The Silent Revolution of Recovered Trades. Media repercussion attracted unexpected invitation. A professor from the Industrial Design Department of the University of Washington contacted in July, requesting I give a talk within a cycle, Unconventional Careers. I accepted nervously. On July 9th, I presented myself before an auditorium with 130 university students between 19 and 24 years old. Title of my talk, Restarting at 60, Abandoning the Expected for the Authentic. I spoke for an hour and a half without prepared notes, simply sharing honest experience. Initial fear of abandoning financial security, process of reconnection with forgotten passion, learning that genuine success is measured in internal satisfaction, not in bank figures. Q&A session lasted 40 additional minutes. Young people wanted to know how to overcome family pressure, how to finance professional transitions, how to maintain courage against social criticism. A student raised hand timidly. "Do you ever regret having waited so long to make this change?" I replied without hesitation. "Constantly. But I also understand I needed to live 40 years on the wrong path to fully value being on the right one now. Maybe at 25 I wouldn't have had emotional maturity to sustain this." The moment arrived when it had to arrive. My relationship with Linda had evolved gradually from May toward clearly romantic territory. It began with an unexpected kiss in her studio one rainy late afternoon, continued with dinners extending until dawn, talking about vulnerabilities neither shared easily, consolidated in nights where I slept in her apartment, listening to rain against windows while she read next to me. We were in no hurry to formalize anything. Both had lived enough to know labels matter less than quality of shared time. Linda respected my need for space to work. I admired her fierce independence. We met when we genuinely wanted to be together, not out of routine obligation. David visited monthly from Miami, bringing youthful energy that lit up whole days. During August visit, we walked through Cary Park while he told me about a new girlfriend he had met, a literature professor with whom he shared passion for classic poetry. "Dad, seeing you happy taught me something fundamental," he said while we contemplated the bay. "Sacrificing constantly for family doesn't make you a better father, it makes you a ghost of yourself. Thanks for showing me that establishing limits is an act of self-love, not selfishness." His words moved me deeply. I had raised a son capable of extracting mature lessons from painful situation. During those months, I knew from David that Emily continued pregnancy without major complications, thanks to private medical coverage I financed. She posted occasionally on social media photographs of ultrasounds, thoughts on impending motherhood, never tagged me, never mentioned directly, observed my life from digital distance, newspaper articles, workshop posts, photographs with Linda. David told me she cried seeing the Design magazine report. "She finally understands who you really were underneath the provider role," my son commented. Linda and I decided to get married one July afternoon while sharing cider on her terrace. There was no formal proposal with diamond ring, just honest conversation that drifted naturally toward mutual commitment. "Why don't we make official this that we already live?" she suggested with calm smile. "I'm 62, you 66. We know exactly who we are and what we want." I nodded, feeling absolute certainty. Small ceremony, only people who really matter. She raised her glass. "Perfect." We organized the wedding for August 16th, 2025 at Alki Beach, exactly 14 months after the Miami disaster that, paradoxically, triggered my rebirth. We invited only 20 people. David, with his girlfriend Laura, Anthony and his wife Rose, who traveled from Miami, the 5 workshop apprentices with their partners, artist colleagues of Linda, owner of the restaurant where we would celebrate dinner later. Morning of the 16th dawned clear with soft breeze from the Sound. Civil ceremony took place at 11 facing the water. The officiant was a woman named Mary, who conducted procedure with professional warmth. Linda wore an ivory pantsuit. I wore light gray linen. Nothing ostentatious. Everything authentic. When time for vows arrived, Linda spoke first. Michael, you gave me back faith that men capable of reinventing themselves honestly exist. I promise to accompany you in creation, respect you in solitude, love you in fullness. My own words emerged without prior preparation. Linda, you taught me it is never too late to return home. I promise to value every shared day as a gift earned, not as a right assumed. We exchanged simple silver rings designed by Amy. Sincere applause from 20 people who genuinely celebrated our happiness filled the air. David hugged me tightly, whispering, "Mom would be happy seeing you like this." Informal photographs, spontaneous laughter, prolonged hugs. We were walking toward the restaurant when a known figure appeared at the edge of the group, Emily holding a baby in arms. My daughter looked different. Shorter hair, face thinned by recent experiences, look combining shame with timid determination. The creature in her arms would be 4 months old, wrapped in light pink blanket. Emily approached slowly. "Dad, I know I am not invited. David told me about the wedding, but respected your decision not to include me. I came anyway because I need you to know Sophie, your granddaughter." Tense silence surrounded the moment. Linda touched my arm gently, but did not intervene. It was my decision exclusively. I observed Emily carefully. There was no longer arrogance in her posture, nor expectation of automatic privileges. Only a vulnerable mother, waiting for a crumb of paternal recognition. I approached and looked at the baby, tiny girl with dark eyes identical to Sarah's. Sophie observed me with that pure curiosity newborns have. I felt something move in my chest. Not exactly forgiveness toward Emily, but recognition of absolute innocence in a creature who did not choose circumstances of her birth. "She is beautiful," I commented with controlled voice. Emily exhaled, held breath. "She looks like Mom. Sometimes I look at her and see the grandmother she will never know." Tears began sliding down her cheeks. "Dad, I know I destroyed our relationship. I know I deserve the distance you established. But Sophie deserves a grandfather. I do not ask to recover what was lost. I only ask that she has opportunity to know you." David approached discreetly. "Dad, I can coordinate occasional visits if you are willing. Emily will live in Miami indefinitely. I will mediate meetings initially." My son had thought this through carefully. I looked at Linda, seeking silent guidance. She nodded almost imperceptibly. The decision was mine, but she would support me in any direction. I took a deep breath before speaking. "Emily, you can know this version of me I built after you destroyed the previous one, but you need to understand something fundamental. The father who financed your life unconditionally died that night at your wedding. What remains is a man who values dignity over blood ties." I made a deliberate pause. "Sophie can visit me 4 times a year, mediated by David in Seattle. You will bring her, but our interactions will be cordial and limited. There will be no financial support beyond occasional gifts from my granddaughter. There will be no reconstruction of father-daughter relationship as it existed before. Do you accept those terms?" Emily nodded quickly. "I accept everything. Thanks, Dad. It is more than I deserve." She approached, trying to hug me, but I extended hand to shake hers formally. The message was clear. Limits remain firm. She left shortly after, taking Sophie. The group continued toward the restaurant, where celebration proceeded with recovered joy. Linda took my hand under table during lunch. "You did the right thing establishing clear boundaries," she murmured. "Compassion does not require sacrifice of healthy limits." 6 months later, in February 2026, I find myself in my workshop, finishing a dresser made with century-old boatwood, while George assists clients interested in a dining table. 20 months have passed since that humiliation that catalyzed my deepest transformation. Emily brought Sophie 3 times according to agreement. Meetings were correct, but distant. I enjoy observing my granddaughter grow, but without illusions of complete family restoration. I have formed 7 apprentices who now work independently, maintaining learned philosophy. Workshop generates stable income, allowing me to live comfortably without touching main reserves. Linda and I share balanced existence between chosen company and necessary creative solitude. I learned a lesson that transformed everything. It is never too late to restart when base is genuine authenticity. Revenge would have been maintaining resentment, poisoning me internally. True victory was building happiness so solid that painful past became irrelevant. Every piece of furniture I create carries memory of previous lives. The wood that was boat, tree, dwelling. I, too, was many versions: obedient son, scared businessman, devoted husband, manipulated father. Now I am simply Michael, 67-year-old carpenter who finally lives according to his own truth. If you like this story, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box to the left. Thanks for watching.